One book in the world 4 years ago called Capital and 21st Century, and his book came out, second book in France last month. It hasn't been translated into English yet, but the first sentence of the book, which is entitled Capital and Ideology, I'll translate loosely. He says, every civilization that has ever existed has had an ideology that justifies the exploitation of others. So everybody in this room is on team transition. And what we're doing is, I'm going to give the inverse talk of what Rob gave. I'm going to give the other side of the coin. So to ask why he would think the things that he thought at that age. And, let's look at the systems of thought, as Foucault called them, that would cause him to think the way that he thought. So, Herbert Spencer gave the quote, just falsely attributed to Darwin, survival of the fittest, which is what capitalism is based on, and it was fantastic for 250 years. But right now we're watching the implosion of this system, and as I said, all of us are on team transition. So Eliot wrote, he asked, does it end with a bang or a whimper? So I personally, and this is my own bias, thought that Barack Obama was going to help bring the next iteration of America and capitalism to fruition. But he met what I'm going to call, I'm really biased and provocative, but I'll just call it the white male Christian hegemony. So that's John Boehner and Mitch McConnell. And so the theme of one of the threads of my book is that power corrupts. So we have white males who have enjoyed a healthy run of raping and destroying the planet and killing everything in sight. Eckhart Tolle talks about 100 million murders in the 20th century, and I would say, if there were 100 million murders, including World War I and II, 90 million of them were at the hands of white men. Right? We're fairly deleterious as a species. And so the people in this room, how do we make it to the next, how do we transition to the next society, right? Where there's enough food to feed everyone on the planet, and 3.5 billion people live on less than $1.90 a day. There's 6,500 kids are going to die within the next 24 hours in Africa of diarrhea and other things that we can go to Walgreens and just cure. So what is it about, I'll go back to Piketty, the fact that we still think it's a zero-sum game, that if I have a piece of the pie, you can't have it, right? So in the classes that I teach, the next paradigm has to be, as the people in this room know, I can't be great unless you're great, right? How am I going to make your life great? And by the same thread, that's how my own personal healing and overcoming of the traumas that I endured will come to be less impactful, So it's funny, I was teaching a class last week in New York, and for some reason this story came to mind that I'll recount. A gentleman took one of my classes one day, and I was giving a lecture. I was actually quoting Rilke, but then it came into the impact that we have on other people. And he came up to me and he came up to me during the break, and he said, a guy called me. I'm a addictions counselor. A guy called me and he said, I got a phone call saying, I want to take you to lunch. You saved my life 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I said, great, let's go to lunch. So they go to lunch, and the guy recounts all the things he's done for the past 30 years. And at the end of lunch, the addiction specialist who's in front of me says, he confessed, he's like, I'm so sorry, but I actually don't ever recall meeting you. How did I save your life 30 years ago? And he said, well, 30 years ago, I walked into a meeting and you put your hand on my shoulder and you said, "You're going to be all right." So the most little interactions we have with other human beings, whether it's at the checkout counter, so we have to learn this new modality, and I actually think that it's been infused through to our culture through His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and so we don't have to live by competing with each other, right? We have to live by being compassionate. So for me, the joke I tell is that if you went to my grandmother in 1972 and you said, someday there's going to be transgender bathrooms and gay people can marry and a black man will be president and marijuana will be legal, she would have said, no, never, right?
If you say this in Russia now, that will be not. Marijuana will be legal.
So, and the joke I say is in 40 years, when people look back on us, they'll say, oh, those morons, they had to use iPhones. They didn't know they could telecommunicate. And they'll say, oh, those morons, they had to use airplanes. They didn't realize they could teleport themselves. Right? So you don't know. The only thing that we know is if we don't hemorrhage ourselves off the planet because of all the terrible things we've done to Gaia, the Earth, is that we're going to look back on this part of our evolution or devolution as pivotal. So it's up to us. We're the ones we've been waiting for, as Alice Walker says. We can't push the can any further down the road. Where amidst climate change, all the horrible things that are happening are all our fault. We have let this happen, and it's all been because of this system called capitalism, which is, as Malcolm Harris so beautifully puts in his books, Kids These Days, the primary. So there's two things in our world. There's either capital or labor. So the primary job of capital owners is to minimize labor costs, which means that we're basically trying to exploit each other in some capacity. And so we have to figure out a new way of interacting. I mean, I had a website 10 years ago called karmaexchange.org. And so I wanted to have people like, oh, I'll rake your leaves if you do a chiropractic thing on me. But we couldn't figure it out. Like, how are we going to live in a world without money? Which is why Burning Man is such a beautiful experience, because you go there and it's like, oh, who am I if I'm not a wallet? Right? Or like a walking wallet, like just walking around. So I don't know what's going to happen. Our culture is, our government has borrowed trillions of dollars. We're all the beneficiaries through student loans, mortgages, and credit cards, right? And as I said, I don't know who discovered water, but I thought it was a fish, Marshall McLuhan said. So right now, you're amidst the implosion of capitalism. It's happening, right? So as I said, we're the ones that are going to have to, when the banks collapse or when World War III occurs, because that's a very large capitalist endeavor, or when the next tsunami hits. I mean, 240,000 people were hemorrhaged off the earth on, what was it, December 24th, 2003? I mean, wait till that happens in Seattle. Right? And again, it's our fault because of the way we've been living, not respecting Gaia, not respecting the earth. So we're the ones who are going to have to just say, we're going to have to own it, like who we are, and be able to show up in a way that inspires those other people. Because, I mean, my joke is, as a teacher, I don't think you can teach anyone past the age of 10 years old anything. But you can inspire them.
That's awesome.
Right.
You can inspire them to want to be a new way, and hopefully just by mentioning Thomas Piketty's name or Michel Foucault or whoever, I've inspired you to go down a rabbit hole and study some things later, so you can have this other perspective of why we all think the things that we think, and then our own karma and our own dharma and what we're being called upon to do in order to transition and help transition this world to a more loving, compassionate, authentic place. Thank you.
Wow. I have so many questions.